now that the front is finished and all the routing is done, there is still a groove for the bottom we need to put in, but I'm going to do that with all of the sides together so they're exactly the same size. They're in the right place. So we'll lay that aside. Now we're going to deal with the other three sides of this drawer. Now it gets a little bit tricky, the math does, because like I said, we have a rabbet here in the front. On the back, the rabbet, the same rabbet, but it's in the side panel, so it's a little bit weird. We had to do a little bit of math. Let me go through it and I'll make sure that it's up there on the screen for you. So the back piece, and I've got my paper to write it down on, is going to be exactly the same height. They're all going to be the same height, so that's 3 inches tall. So I just write back 3 inches by, now I have to figure out my length. The way that this is set up, with rabbets the way that they are, the back piece from outside to outside needs to be the same as the front, but subtract 1/4 inch here and 1/4 inch there for the rabbet joints. So I have 13 7/8 for my front, minus 1/2 inch. How many eighths is a half? 4/8. So what is 7/8 minus 4/8? It's 3/8. So my dimension for this actual piece is going to be 13 3/8. So we write that down, 13 3/8. So now I've got the back ready. The sides, they're going to be the same, 3 inches tall. So sides, 3 by how long? My total depth, I want it to be 15, and that means from the front edge here to the very back. But because of this rabbet, I also need to subtract 1/2 inch, just like we did before. 15 minus 1/2 is going to be 14.5. So there's your measurements, and go start cutting pieces of alder. And because everything is 3 inches tall, again, try to find pieces that are a little bigger than 6 so that I can get a 3 and a 3 next to each other, or try to make them as narrow as possible so I have less waste. Again, we started the upcut saw. I'm looking for scraps. Now again, I couldn't find any in here that were quite long enough, but down in the longer bin, I had a few that I could use, or I found one that I would use for the back, and then I'm just gonna cut 2 more out of a raw piece that I found that I grabbed from the back room and cut my other 2. So our lengths, and I've got them right here, are 13 3/8 and 14.5. So I'm just gonna round everything off and make it simple. Cut 1 piece 14 and 2 pieces 15.5. So we'll go 14. That's for my back. And then the other 2 are 15.5. Now remember, if you found a piece of alder that's wide enough to get both of them side by side, you're only going to need 1 cut. Just keep that in mind so we don't waste material. But I need 2 cuts because they're not wide enough. I got the narrowest board I could find. This piece that I found already cut has a good edge, so I don't need to joint it. The other 2 need it. Set the table saw to 3 inches and make all of your cuts. Here are my measurements, 13 3/8. That's the shortest one here. So again, we're going to trim off one end. And set this to 13 inches 3/8. The other 2 are 14.5. And repeat the process. The next thing we need to do is plane these boards down to 1/2 inch thick. So again, we're going to start at the same place, the 14/16. Lower down. With the handle at the top, you'll see a little gap in the paint right there. Okay, and that's 14/16 or 7/8. You're going to cut until we get down to a 1/2 inch. So that should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 passes. But guys, just look, when this finger is at the 1/2 inch mark and the handle is at the top, you're on a 1/2 inch. So it's easier for me to just see that it's at a 1/2 inch than to count 6 times through the machine. I've looked at the measurement every time I've passed, and because I lost track of the 6, happens all the time. Just stoop down and look, it's at the 1/2 inch mark, the handle's on top, this will be my last pass. Here at the Wide Belt Sander, we're gonna sand these down. Now, remember that router table? It's set up for plywood. Now the plywood should be really close to a 1/2 inch thick, but because it comes in metric and not standard size like we're using, the 16ths, it actually is a hair less than a 1/2 inch. That's why we planed all the way down to a 1/2, because now we can use this to go down to, instead of 0.5, we're gonna sand down to 0.48. 0.48. So this eventually will say 0.48 and then you're done. Lower it down, set it as usual, but now I'm actually telling you where you're sanding to. All right, so I'm at about 0.52, so it's gonna be a number of passes. Again, because these pieces are so small, we can tap twice per pass, and it'll do just fine. With any wood, it'll handle it. You gotta go tap, tap, about that fast. You'll see the light up in the upper left corner 2 times, and it will raise 10 thousandths. Do not hold that button. It'll be way too much to take off. We're back to that big round router table with the 3 pieces. Shaper 1, the back piece. This is the shorter one of the 3. Here's my 3 pieces. This one is shorter than the rest. This does not need anything at Shaper 1. Lay it aside. There. The 2 longer ones, these are my left and right. I need a rabbet in the back end. So pick an end, it doesn't matter which one, and you're gonna cut the same rabbet we did before, here and here. Not on both ends. This is where it can get a little tricky in your mind. So just keep in mind, one end on both. So put a face down, it doesn't really matter which end is down. And I'm gonna be using the 1/2 inch thick brace, the 1/2 inch thick holder as we go, not the thicker one. Always blow away the sawdust. Good. Any tear out here, it doesn't go through, that just comes right off. Now remember, I yelled, make sure to blow away the sawdust. If I put another board on top of that sawdust, it would be up too high. That's why it's really important for the next piece, always blow that sawdust away. Now we're at shaper number 2. This is the one we just used a second ago. Number 2 is a 1/4 inch plow bit. In other words, it creates a groove for the bottom to fit into so it doesn't fall out. Now again, this is one of those that can be a little tricky. So all I'm gonna do now, this is the back and this is the front. I pulled the front one, it's the one that's got the rabbets in both ends. And I'm just gonna do those right now. Leave the sides away for a second. Now, either sitting on this table or right behind you with you standing here on the shaper right behind, there's gonna be this little jig, this little gadget. It's got a piece of wood and this fits in behind the blade and hooks right here. I cut it to fit in perfectly. Don't worry about this gap, that's okay. The reason this is here, I have this set so that the groove is a 1/2 inch up. And for a large drawer, you want that kind of support, a little bit more wood underneath the bottom so it doesn't pop out. This drawer is tiny, it's not gonna hold a lot of weight, so I want as much volume inside the drawer as I can get. So I'm going to put a spacer here that'll make the groove go down a 1/4 inch. That's all it's for. If you forget, the worst that'll happen is you'll have a shallower drawer, and that's it. But hook it in, and then you're going to run it across the groove. This one does not have a rabbet. This is the back. So I'm going to cut the groove. I'm going to avoid that knot. So I want to cut here. When you're done, all of the sawdust kind of sits inside. You can either whack it out like that. You may run it again, but do not go backwards. Do not do that. You're going to lose control, and it's going to end up on the other side of the shop. Let me blow all that away. We don't ever want to put wood on sawdust to run through. It's going to be uneven. Now, the front also needs a groove. The rabbets here and here go down. So pick your bottom edge. And mine, it doesn't really matter. I'll just pick one. Good, now that one's done. And you can see, it's hard to see on the camera, the depth of this rabbet and the depth of this groove are the same. Now for the left and right, blow that away, we need opposites. So I put the rabbets together. You can see they're face to face, opposite each other. Open them up. Okay, so the rabbets are up. I'm gonna put a groove on this edge and this edge, inside and inside. Yes, outside and outside works as well, but whatever. Inside, inside. So I have something to tell me, because then I have a definite left and a definite right. I don't want two rights or two lefts. If you do, you got to make another one. So there's my line. That's against the fence, and we'll run that through. Here's my line here. Flip this way. Do the same thing. Good. Now all the pieces are routed and done.